to the Sloppy Lab, bottom of the Beaker, number 7, I believe. Welcome. Hello, Quick Draw. How are you doing this evening?
Happy Tuesday to you and everyone else watching. Thank you guys for joining again.
hmm And not just the two of us, we have some special guests this evening. Karen and Murph from the Swindle's Dusk Chronicles are joining us for an excellent crossover episode. Awesome. Welcome to you both.
Thank you
Hello.
for having me.
Thank you.
It is our pleasure, leveling up the game in the lab, as it were, 100%. So we're going to talk some Triad this evening. Triad best of 3 primarily, but there might be some best of 1 kind of nods here and there. But before we get to that, we have a few kind of announcements to round up. And I think our trusty scientist, Quick Draw, has some
We haven't come up
sloppy.
with titles yet.
Yeah, no, we need some titles, I guess.
Yeah. So we have a weekly segment, What Did Not Tonight Win This Week? And this week she hasn't quite won it yet, but it is extremely relevant to talk about the Minors final between Karen and Not Tonight happening this week, Karen?
Happening tomorrow. I'll be streaming it actually tomorrow at 3 o'clock New York time.
Awesome. Is that
3
going to be
p.m.
on Swindle Dusk Chronicles then?
Yes, that'll be on Swindle Dusk Chronicles.
There you go. Awesome. Best of luck to you and to Not Tonight in that one.
We will drop
I'm
a
sure
link to
we'll
the Dust Chronicles Twitch in our description as well here.
Yeah, there
Thanks.
you go. Couple other announcements for leagues happening this week. The ABR signups end this Thursday night, so about 48 hours from the time of this original broadcast. Awesome league. They have over 100 registered already. They got some swag from Ghost Galaxy donated for prize support. A really amazing team league, great format, great people. Definitely recommend the ABR league, and our own JT Russell's one of the team captains over there. And then another relevant league happening starting this Friday. Joker over in the Vault Keepers is starting a Friday night triad, which I'm really excited about. If I don't forge in real life on Friday nights, will be looking forward to playing Friday night triad with Joker over there. So this Friday's the first one. Check out that Discord as well for the Vault Keepers if you're interested in that. And then also relevant, Karen, you can give some more details to us on this one. The KFPL Triad League starts October 10th.
Sure. So signups are end October 10th, just as you said. We're looking at, I guess this will be the first place that I officially announce it. It looks like, well, it's an unofficial unless the polls go crazy overnight, but it looks like the players are preferring one triad every other week. So we're going to keep it nice and slow, which will allow players to do a little bit of prep and just kind of like think about, the way that they want to ban, be very deliberate, but we also don't want to get in the way of you enjoying other leagues. Right now, the online scene is very kind of league heavy, so we're going to go with that nice spread out approach. So hopefully it won't be a big time commitment, and everybody can play with the seriousness that the format kind of suggests.
Yeah, we have this awful problem in this game where there's too many online leagues. It's horrible. I hate it.
Keyboard
It
much
does
fun.
make choices hard.
Is that the mantra?
The game's dead. There's too many leagues. It's really annoying. I hate it. Speaking of too many leagues, this one's for you, Murph. Kagi 6.0 coming back in the next couple weeks. Signups end on, would you say the 19th? Is that right?
Yes, signups are scheduled to end on Wednesday, October the 19th at 11:59 p.m. New York time. So for those who are procrastinating, please get it in before the time ticks over to Thursday in Eastern Daylight Time for 11:59 on the 19th. The league is supposed to start after that. So if we hit the 19th, and we should have a nice 4 or 5 days turnaround time to start the league on the next Sunday, the 23rd. How long the league goes for will sort of depend on signups and depends on pod size. So if we have a fair number of people and we need a bit more people in per pod, I'm going to give a little bit extra time. I'm looking for 1 more week than there is games scheduled, as the Kagi League is a play as you can scheduling format, as it's a round robin within your pod. So all you need to do is play all of your games within your pod. You can do that anytime you want. If you want to bang them all out on a Saturday evening, maybe not all on Saturday, but on a single Saturday, you're more than welcome to do that. And so that is why I'm giving 1 week extra than the number of games you need played to give players a little bit of breathing room in case things happen, life gets in the way. Obviously, plan on one match a week, but you do have one bye week just in case. So that's the length of thing there. And again, I can't give a timeline on how long the league will go until we know exactly how many people we are. We know how many people are going to be in each pod.
Yeah. And the info's over in the Sanctimonious Discord server for the Kagi. Awesome league. If you love adaptive, it's just one of those like pure formats, just like a really good time, a great way to like enjoy Keyforge as Garfield intended. And props to you, Murph, for taking this over. Fighting Walloon had started it up. Amazing league organizer we've talked about on this show before. And just thank you for like picking that up and keeping it going. It's one of my favorite leagues.
Yeah, thank you. It was definitely one of those things where it was one of the leagues that I got into onto the online scene with when I first started playing the game, and I really showed me the beauty of Keyforge that is adaptive best of three, and I think I took a deck into it in my first season. That's become my go-to adaptive deck that I thought I couldn't win with, and I thought was trash, and I've come to grow a special bond with it, and it's treated me well after many games with it and really getting to learn its ins and outs. So I think it really shows off the exemplary nature of this format.
Yeah, we talked about adaptive last week with B-Hawk, so if anyone's interested in hearing what else we think about adaptive, then check out last week's episode. Some good stuff there with B-Hawk.
And one addition on that topic, yeah, we did have a bunch of kind of surveys we put out for folks to give their takes on some adaptive best of one bidding. Those are up on the Sloppy Lever website, so go to the notes section. It's going to be the first thing there. So if you're curious about some of those particular lineups and we didn't hit it in the discussion last time, you can check it out there and see what folks thought.
Yeah, and the last announcement I have is the one that I am personally very excited about. So I have some exclusive news straight from Christian Peterson on Winds of Exchange. I have not shared this with any of you guys here. No one else knows this except for me and Christian Peterson and anyone else that works at Ghost Galaxy. And because I have that like knowledge personally, I'm actually not going to tell you guys. So we're going to move on to something else. Just kidding. Very excited. I can exclusively tell you guys with 100% certainty from the mouth of Christian Peterson that in Winds of Exchange, we will have a reprint of Whirlpool. I am ecstatic about this. I literally reached out to Ghost Galaxy directly and asked this question. Christian, the fantastic person he is, literally, he responded directly to me and he said, "This is in Winds of Exchange." He said, "I don't know if you've already heard this already or not, but he confirmed it. This is not a drill, guys. Whirlpool is coming back."
This is what the build-up was for?
This is it. Yeah, I told you. It's going to be amazing.
That's excellent.
I think you should have left that. You should have left that for further into the episode. That's the hook. So you get him to stay.
Yeah,
You
everybody's
can't
going to leave.
man. You can't. Leave.
That is very exciting news, though.
I
It
mean,
is cool.
everyone knows my love of Whirlpool, so.
Yeah.
So
Well, your favorite deck that I own, I think, is Bono, right? For that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bono's amazing. I love Bono.
Yeah, but I think Whirlpool in particular has really interesting implications in a meta that's going to have so many creatures and stuff. So I mean, it's going to get really, really complicated, and
Yeah.
Sending you might be able to do some degenerate stuff just because like some cards can only affect tokens, and you could like give one to your opponent and do something weird with it. Like who knows?
It's going to
what the
showcase
interactions could
the
be.
magnificence and just insanity of Whirlpool, and I can't wait. It's going to be so
Yep.
much fun. There's been some spoilers from other outlets as well that have like some weird Whirlpool interactions. Like I think it's a Sanctum creature that says at the end of each player's turn, they take control of each card that their opponent controls that they own. So kind of like
that's the historian.
yeah, so it like takes back the Whirlpool stuff. So it's like a weird counter to that. But just awesome interactions like that. I always love those like weird interactions. That's like another layer of it. But the tokens are going to be pretty wild with it. Yeah.
But wouldn't that just make your Whirlpool do nothing for you?
That Sanctum
Actually.
creature would, yes. It's a rare
Yeah.
creature. So maybe that's like my arch nemesis now is that Sanctum rare. But
Yeah, you got to ban every deck that has it in it.
yeah, if I go
Really
to
question
Triad,
there. So for bounce effects, because we know cards underneath tokens are treated as tokens until they're in their respective zones. So if you have Whirlpool and you have a bunch of your opponent's tokens on your board, and they play, if you play Hysteria or something, or whatever bounce effect, and those go back into your hand.
no, they'll go to the owner.
Oh, they go to their
they'll go-
opponent's hand because
yeah,
of
they
all
go to-
right, because the abduction clause and stuff.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, exactly. So,
They
um,
future-proof themselves.
yeah. Well, I can tell that I disappointed JT with that news, but I'm personally excited. So I told him before the show, I said, I'm going to highly disappoint you with this exclusive news, but I am personally very excited for it.
I'm excited. I'm just waiting for your little video to move from the right side to the left side of the lineup here in the list of videos, kind of in an honorary fashion, you know.
Well, I did take your recommendation. My Whirlpool drawer in my organization is now on the right flank of the cabinet, so it's good to
That
go.
is fitting. That is fitting. Okay, well maybe there will be a Whirlpool Triad lineup at some point from you. Yeah.
Yeah, there will definitely be eventually. I have enough for I think 7 or 8 Whirlpool triads. Um, so yes, there will be one.
Are they already prepared, as in
No,
terms of what you're looking for in the triads?
no, they're not yet. I've to this point I have been almost indiscriminately collecting Whirlpools. Um, language is the first thing I'm looking for. So this is like the third time I've given this shameless plug. I'm still looking for a simplified Chinese, a Korean, and a Portuguese Whirlpool. You or anyone you know out there has those, hit me up. Um, but I think it might be maybe a little bit easier to get those since it's going to be reprinted, and we also know that we hit the Crucible of Languages stretch goals, so we know that those languages are coming back. So exciting times for Whirlpool lovers like me.
Yeah, you
Okay,
know.
that was the last announcement we had, JT.
Oh, one more, not to steal your thunder, but
Oh yeah,
quick shout out to Crusader for winning the NKFL AOA 80 cap Archon solo event, mouthful there, but with a middling SAS, like 66 mid 60s deck, so kind of notable
before.
for kind of piling that through a field of monsters. So well done, Crusader.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And also, if you want more information on that deck, go back a few weeks, bottom of the Beaker. He talked about that deck on this show.
that was his pet deck. Yeah.
That was his pet deck. And 64 SAS, he took down an 80 SAS cap AOA tournament. Like, very impressive.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, cool.
Absolutely. I think the multiple mimicries definitely helped.
Yeah,
Yeah.
leaning on the strength of the competitors for sure. Though their lineups anyway.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Um, so I think that was it then. And we can get into the Triad now. Lots of discussion happening tonight on Triad. We're going to talk about best of three for the most part. But when we're done with it, we're going to play a game, which is just going to be a best of one just for time's sake. And we're going to do what we have been doing the last few weeks, which I think has been a lot of fun, which is a hand and brain game. So JT and I will play one side of the hand and brain. Karen and Murph will play the other side of the hand and brain. We'll do a triad, but a best of one. So we're going to do like the banning process with the brain and then the playing of the game with the hand and brain. So I think it'll be a lot of fun. Hope you guys can stick around for that. The podcasters, just go check out the Twitch or YouTube video on demand. You can check out the game later on.
Cool. Cool. So I have up here on the screen one of your triads. So what do you want to do? Do you want to jump right into this and maybe kick things off with your thought process putting this together? I know we have a bunch of questions for kind of the panel here to consider and what you might consider when putting a triad together or thinking about banning, but maybe that's as good a place as any to start.
I first want to start more generally and kind of like
Sure.
asking when you're picking your triad. And so let me preface this by saying before the show, we drew straws. JT drew the short straw, so he is declared the expert of triad this evening. So all questions of any difficulty whatsoever are going to be pointed to JT. I would really like to know. I've only played Triad once or twice, and like the first thing I think is like, should I just pick my three best decks? Like that's the most logical thing to me. So like, why should I not do that?
Great question. I would probably defer to Karen and Murph here and then say whatever they said, parrot whatever they said. But you know what? I'm going to go on a limb and say that most collections, if you haven't been looking specifically for a triad lineup, like combing the secondary market for a triad lineup, you're probably best off going with your three best decks. Like those are the table stakes. Anything you kind of put together as a candidate lineup after the fact, has to kind of do better than that in a vacuum. That's kind of my take. So I kind of look at your three best Archon decks as as the benchmark for evaluating anything else that you come up with. And I have a decently large collection, like not the largest out there certainly, but enough decks. And I would say, like, even up until recently, most of the Triad events that I've gone to, some of the KFPL qualifiers in the past, I don't know, I would just bring my 3 best decks. But not sure whether that's right or wrong, but that was kind of my take, and that's what I'd start with. I don't know, any dissension from Karen and Murph on that?
Do you know what your best 3 decks are?
Good question.
Yeah, I don't know if I would. I would know 1 or 2 that I would say yeah, but
Karen's
I
already
think
holding her
that-
feet to the fire here.
I think that we all know what our best 1 or 2 are. And then you got to figure out what to do with that third.
so you're saying that you would take your 2 best and then figure out the third that complements those 2 the best?
For me, yes, I'm in that situation where I have 2 that are on lock, and like I have to use these because they are my consistent kind of Archon decks. And then I have a bunch of very, very, very good decks that are not quite at the tier of those 2. For one reason or another. So like I have decks that have similar win rates, but they're not nearly as degenerate. So like my best 2 decks have combos that just end the game, whereas my decks have similar win rates. So yeah, I'm talking about this lineup right here. So in this case, Quinn and Professor Essa both have game-ending combos once I do what I want to do. Barring some very specific situations, they sort of just win once they do their thing. Whereas Soda Mix is an incredibly consistent deck, far more consistent than Professor Essa or Quinn, actually, in terms of like it doing its thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, but its thing is not nearly as degenerate, so you're kind of trading that consistency of play for height of ceiling, if that makes sense, right? So essentially, what the reason that it fits well into this particular lineup, though, like I have those 2, which are definitely my guys that I bring, like my 2 decks that I would bring, and then the reason that it fits well here is I want to ban similar things. If I ban things that help Professor Essa and Quinn, they also help Soda Mix. So I'm not banning with the necessity of like picking the matchup for my weaker deck. I'm picking a ban that benefits all 3 decks. So that is the philosophy that I go into. It's like you have your ones that you know are a lock. If you're lucky, it's 3, but it's usually 1 or 2. And then you're looking for a coherent triad that will allow you to make ban benefit all 3 decks.
So when you're talking about banning something that like specifically helps all 3 of yours, like you have to know going into it, like what is that thing you're looking for? So in
Right.
like these 3 as an example, like what is the one feature of an opponent's deck that you're looking for that makes you say like I need to ban that?
Okay, so there are basically there's a few things. So it's more complicated than like this kind of deck, that kind of deck. But the most obvious one that I can think of is like decks that are capable of spitting out 10 creatures in a turn. Like that kind of thing where it's just like, oh man. And like all of these decks have answers to that, but it would be the most common thing that degenerate decks do that I might not have an answer for in hand, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other, if I'm not seeing one of those decks, the other thing I might not want to see is like heavy board capture. So like we're also, I mean, these are both like looking at specific kinds of boards. So heavy board capture, that can hurt Quinn due to its inability to get the generosity off against like, let's say like a really degenerate Amphora Captora deck. It can hurt Sodomnix because the Axiom becomes less effective, and it can hurt. It hurts Professor Essa a lot less, to be honest. But it does have the Hysteria and Key of Dis, so it like depends on the kind of board deck. Professor S is a really nice inclusion in this triad because let's say that I am trying to knock out a deck like that, I can use Professor Essa to kind of get rid of it. I'll often use it to lead for that reason, so it can kind of Professor Essa basically covers the widest range of matchups. Like there's no deck that will automatically beat it, in my opinion. because its combo is truly kind of game ending. So if it combos, it really does not matter what you're playing. So I like that as a lead deck. And then from there, I can kind of specialize and attune the matchup to like whatever I think is going to be banned. It just gives some adaptability in that regard. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a lot to analyze. Like anytime we look at this, like normally, I think even for the viewers, like you look at a deck and you can analyze a single deck, but when you're playing in a triad, you have to be able to look at three decks at once and understand how they interact, how they're going to interact with your opponent's triad. Like it's very complex, and I don't have a ton of experience with it. So like I appreciate hearing this kind of discussion on it. I actually there's a great question in the chat from XO73D. Should triad decks be similar or different? So like some of the most infamous triads I've seen have been like someone brings like three Quixelstone decks that all have like great Quixelstone synergy. And then you just like if you don't have three decks that can combat that, you're like, damn, like, what do I do? But then there's other ones that are just like three really good decks, like we've talked about. So like what do you guys think about that? Like, do you want to bring three that are very similar so that like very consistently that no matter what my opponent brings, like or whatever they ban, like I know I'm going to be in the same boat? Or do you want to like have something that's a little bit versatile and play more of like a game theory?
Triad answers the question, in my opinion, of like what is my least favorite way to lose, and then you can avoid that. So if your least favorite way to lose is getting high rolled on by a bad matchup twice in a row, I wouldn't advise bringing three copies of the same deck. But it doesn't really matter. I don't think. I think there's a lot of different ways to play Keyforge, but it depends what is your least favorite way to lose. That's just my opinion.
And there's kind of another wrinkle to that as well. There's like, did I lose in the game or did I lose in the banning phase? So I'm going to call out the
Yeah.
Team ABR folks, Zotted and Ned Mike. So there's a decent chance when you sit down to play a Triad or a Moirai match against an ABR player that you're going to see, three very spicy Jenka decks or three very spicy Quixel decks, and you're going to have an uphill battle unless you have three decks that can combat that particular strategy, right? Because in a lot of ways, the gameplay of Triad is almost defined by the weakest link as opposed to what is the strongest of the two remaining decks, because you're kind of trying not to get cornered. At least that's a little bit how I think about it. Now, one of the things I really do like about the three similar decks approach, and this is coming from me as someone who may not be as strong a deck evaluator in that kind of 5-minute span. Like if I'm bringing three decks, whether they're similar card for card or similar strategically, albeit with different cards, it makes that evaluation and banning process much more straightforward. Like taking Moirai as an example, but having very, very similar parallel to Triad. Like if I'm bringing a deck that relies heavily on artifacts, I know to like home in on the artifact removal deck for reversal, and then put the weakest one in Archon. Similarly for Triad, I might be like, well, I'm just going to ban the deck that's most able to deal with artifacts, and then whatever the absolute strength of the remaining two is, I'm kind of just leaning on the strategy proposition that I brought to the table, as opposed to like win via absolute strength. And that was kind of the idea behind this example lineup I brought here. So I've got three decks here that rely heavily.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm
No
sorry.
problem.
I was just like, the reason that I dislike that is what if their worst deck has double tacky pulls?
Yeah.
That is why I tend to dislike that personally. Do you have like a response to that, like as somebody who plays that kind of Triad? Like what do you do if it's like, oh man, that deck is like, they brought like something that is like clearly not as strong as the other two, but it has like the kryptonite. Do you still ban it, or do you try to overcome it anyway?
There's a tipping point, and like if you say like, wow, this is clearly their worst deck, and I don't know, maybe not hopefully, but hopefully you're bringing decks that are at least of a level where they're going to compete with the field in general. So if there is a deck in the lineup where it's like, wow, you just reach into the collection to have something to throw out there, but it has my kryptonite. Okay, now we have to start like doing some weighing on, is it worth letting you bring this kryptonite, or do I think I can just rely on the deck strength outside of my particular strategy to overcome the weaker deck. I do try, even when I'm bringing like the triple Quixel lineup or the triple Heart lineup, to have decks that are gonna play without their gimmick or without their particular linchpin card. I mean, the Heart of the Forest deck here, Nemesis, like it can win without Heart. Like it really does want to play the Heart game, but it's possible to like overcome a much weaker deck without it, you know. And I played Stealth Warper, which is a very, very strong Quixel deck in the NKFL season, not this past one, but the one before. And it won a fair number of games, you know, never playing the stone. But you see, you know, 12 creatures, 18 speed, and you know, lots of pips is just going to do work and be able to.
Not bad, I guess.
it's okay, and like it can still win games if it needs to. But it's a good question. It's a really good question. I don't have like a blanket right answer, but I do think that there's like some value to be gained in the banning phase by having a clear strategy, and whether that's like I have 3 glass cannons. It doesn't have to be that, but I do like the idea of having an idea that you can articulate as like the value prop of your lineup, and like kind of having that in mind during the banning phase, even if it's just like, well, I brought 3 awesome decks and I'm gonna like overpower my opponent. Like maybe that's where it stops. But yeah,
I think it's really important to me to be able to ban my opponent's best deck, regardless of what that kind of means. If I'm like, you know, which one of these 3, if I was offered these for free, which one would I take home?
It's an interesting way to look at it.
So I'm gonna,
you know, and
pose this then.
Sorry?
I didn't want to cut you off, but I was gonna say, let me pose this then. Let's say I mean, I don't know what you call the kryptonite here, but it's like you see the deck and you're like, oh gosh, they've got the like, I don't know, Eaton's Jar. What shuts down library access? I don't know. I don't know. What is your like dreaded matchup for Professoressa? Do you have one?
The reason that I like that deck is that it doesn't lose games based on matchups, really. Generally speaking, heavy amounts of discarding can be rough for it, but I can always help for future self it back. It tends to lose just like it's playing against a good deck, and that deck had its good hands, and I didn't have the good hands. But like it kind of just doesn't care what it's playing against, which is why it's so powerful. Whereas Sotomix and Quinn do have matchups that I need to like manage and care about in different ways. But I'll use Professoressa to lead off in many different formats because it just doesn't care what it's up against.
So having some experience, Karen, with your lineup, if your opponent is bringing 3 Zumi decks that all have 20 plus creatures and 20 speed, and Professoressa is banned.
Okay.
You expect Professoressa to be banned. What are you looking for among those 3 decks that are all doing very similar things to try and optimize the matchups for Sotomix and Quinn?
So I guess I'd look at a few things. So funny enough, I would actually look at house overlap because you can see that Sotomix has double free markets and Quinn has a free markets. So that house overlap can be extremely relevant, actually. It's also good for blinding light because it makes it guaranteed one-sided. I would then look at creature protection, like effective power type things, because like there's a big difference between a line of like 2 power things with no armor, if somebody's like spitting out 4 Kirby's, and something like a whole bunch of Saurians coming out, right? That's like what kind of creature that is, and like which deck can manage it each way. In this particular case, I think there's 2 differentiators that I think about other than the house overlap. one of which is the ability to capture onto creatures and then ward them is bad for Sodom Nyx in particular. It's bad for Quinn preventing the Martian generosity as well, so that's a big deal. And then I'll also look at hard disruption. I actually don't care that much about Jar because I can almost always remove it in any three of these decks. But I do care about like Mark of Dis is always going to make your life harder, right? And if one of the decks doesn't have it, the other does, well, I'm going to probably choose to play uninterrupted at least if I'm going to have to play against this crazy stuff. So there's a lot of differentiators there, and like JT was saying earlier, it's like matchup dependent. How you're thinking about that.
Yeah. So do you go into like this is a question for anybody really? Do you go into a triad expecting one of your decks to be banned? And I guess related to that, follow up sort of is like, do you ever consider bringing in like ban bait, so to speak, something that like you think that maybe based on the SAS, if you're playing online, they can look at the SAS, or like some other like unique feature of it, like just having Jenka, for example, like that you're confident that they're going to ban a specific deck.
I mean, I certainly have. I've never played Triad, so I can't speak for Triad specifically. But I do have a few seasons of NKFL, which is sort of like a double Triad game.
The Hexad format, which I don't think we've talked about in too much detail in here, but we've had it on our list of things to talk about. Really cool format.
Great
Yeah,
format.
and so like I know going into that for this, my lineup this season, my lineups going forward, I have one deck that I think is my best deck. That's part of my Triad, um, and I got to play it in the first week, and I never got to play it again. And basically, I can go into
Somebody
pretty
found
much.
out.
Yeah, basically, someone let me play it the first week, and some people watch my stream and realize they should never let me play that deck again. And so then it definitely changes. It warps. Knowing what my first deck to be banned is going to be, or knowing if in a triad, probably it's going to be the one that's banned as well. It sort of warps what I'm thinking about in terms of what my other two decks are going to be, because I'm no longer dealing with a triad where all three are actually options, which is I think that is where the benefit of ban bait, or even just if you have an outlier deck that you presume to be banned. In my case, if I'm not working on a triad basis. I'm working on a biad where I have two decks, and I need to figure out how I'm going to be able to play those decks into the heat that my opponents are going to be bringing. And so, one of those cases is it going to be, presumably, at a lower SAS level than say like the KFPL plays at. Oftentimes, typically, what I'm looking for is decks that can high roll, and decks that if my deck does my thing, if my deck does the thing it wants to do, it should win the game. And so it very much changes, I think, how you approach, and especially for my NKFL lineup, it definitely changed how I approach the banning phases, knowing that deck was never going to be an option. But it also gives you a bit of freedom for the other two decks that you're going to bring, knowing that they probably won't be banned. And if they are banned, you know what? That's great. I'm happy to play my other deck. So basically, you take anything else if it's ever unbanned, it's a win. But you're sort of operating an entirely different strategy space, with just two decks.
So as a funny aside, I for a time was bringing Nemesis, this Heart of the Forest deck, as ban bait, and the ABR League players were very obliging. I think I brought this deck to ABR Triad every season that I've played that format with the ABR, and it's been banned every time. The Nordics could not care less and have yet to ban it in any of the NKFL matches. So it's just kind of funny. The Americans
They
very
play
happy.
a very different meta. Very different meta over there.
Very different meta.
I think the Nordic Hexadders, the experienced Nordic Hexadders in the NKFL, are also very insusceptible to ban bait, it seems, especially when you get up to like gold, and their understanding of NKF of the Hexad and how to corner matchups is very impressive.
Yeah.
So
When I had
also
a smaller collection, oh sorry, I was just gonna say when I had a smaller collection, I kind of leaned into the band bait idea more, just because I didn't
Mhm.
really have like too many great options. So I wanted to like get a little bit more certainty out of it. But playing other games and Keyforge as well, I think one piece of advice that's really helped me become a better player is to always assume your opponents are not going to make a mistake. And band bait is
Yep.
essentially banking on your opponent making a mistake. That's like the whole premise of it. And I
Yeah.
just find that I've gotten better at the game and I've made better decisions and had better results when I just go into it assuming they are going to make the right decision. And no matter what, whether that's like a triad ban or in-game decisions and things like that. I just think it's a good approach to take and to think about when you're playing any game.
Yeah, and I think that's a relevant follow-up point to what I was talking about with operating a biad. Like if
Mhm.
I have to assume that my best deck isn't going to make it through, and how am I gonna then make up that loss in the lineup? And if it does, if my opponent does make the mistake, then it's only a plus for me, or for the person who is also assuming that everyone's operating, 100% knowledge.
So for a while, I was making the 3x3 grid for my triad matchups and trying to estimate, the 6 matchups there, and seeing where yeah, because it's very easy to look at 3 decks and just be like, ooh, not that. But then you actually force yourself to be like, okay, well, how does it match up against my decks 1, 2, and 3? And very often you surprise yourself, and that could just be pushing through the band bait reaction, or even just kind of a knee jerk reaction if it's not band bait. But I found that to be a helpful exercise, though also discouraging when you're like, well, these are all unfavorable.
Right.
And it's like, well, okay, am I gonna mince percentages and be like, where can I high roll and like punch through? But it's interesting, at least as an exercise, to force yourself to see past that first reaction, because it is very easy to be like, ooh, triple mark of dis, or like, ooh, heart of the forest, like just don't want. But when you're like, no, I have tools to play through some of this stuff. I think it's kind
Yeah,
of valuable
I think one of
exercise.
the I was gonna say a recent memory for me that really stuck out for that was during the Swindle Team Events 3, the Team Moirai, and we played against Team Swindle, and I was actually up against Emperor Riku for that week. And that was the week I had done the most preparation for that specific week. And the deck that I had originally considered choosing, it was Reversal, and the deck I originally considered, or no, it was Archon, sorry. Um, and so for that specific week, the deck I originally thought I was going to stay clear of, after some testing, realized that, wow, that's actually the deck that all of mine have the best matchup into, which was entirely surprising. And if I had gone in day of to that matchup, to that specific game, and looked at the deck lists only, and done it right there and right then and there, I would have made the wrong choice, and actually probably put myself into a much worse position than I did, where it was a rather deciding it was a decisive game rather than something that was probably would have been poor for me.
So it sounds like that's not something you would have recognized in 5 minutes, though. If you just
No,
have,
um it certainly is. It was illuminating then, of like, I don't think it wasn't a band bait deck, but it was like, oh, this deck actually does have poor matchups.
yeah. I mean, it's Keyforge. Every deck's gonna have some bad matchups. Like, it's a really incredible attribute of this game that, like, when I first started playing, I was thinking like, oh man, there's definitely gonna be some decks that are just unbeatable, and I've yet to find one.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, are we deep
There's no
enough in the
bad cards in my
podcast
grandpa's
for
deck.
a, are we deep enough in the podcast for a oh sorry, in the stream for a hot take?
always, yes.
Okay. Triad Best of 1 is better from a conceptual standpoint than Triad Best of 3. It is a better format in every conceivable way.
I can't
Uh,
agree or disagree. I don't know.
okay,
Tell us more.
so the reason that I think this is that it,
Gotten agreed in chat.
yeah. So the reason that I think this is kind of like multiple things, but it allows your imbalanced decks to shine that are not necessarily your number one kind of like Archon choices, right? Because you can bring something, it's like, okay, this is my like heavy C deck. Like, let's say that I brought Quinn and Professor Essa in Triad Best of 1. I could bring something that's an absolute board burner and kind of cover a whole, right? So it prevents you from just getting absolutely blindsided in a matchup. Whereas if everybody has a potential to just get totally blindsided and have like a completely unfun game created just by somebody bringing the right three decks, that really has nothing to do with like their, I shouldn't say nothing to do with their quality as a player or anything, but you lose control in that situation, right? Like, whereas in Triad Best of One, if you brought a good lineup, you should never be in a situation where you get totally burnt.
So at least you're saying that in a Triad best of one, you're always in the game. If like,
Yep, you're always in the game in Triad Best of One, and you can put yourself in a situation where you can win with like maybe not even your best decks, right? But you can put yourself where you're always in winnable matchups. Whereas in Triad Best of Three, you are conceding the fact that there are just some matchups that I am going to lose.
Yeah, and I think the best of three aspect of um, Triad is really hard, right? Winning with both of your decks into presumably both matchups is going to be is just that's a tall task to ask of three decks is to cover basically all of Keyforge.
so that kind of is a good segue, I think, into the next question I wanted to ask you guys, which was when you're playing your best of three Triad, does it matter to you what order you play your decks in? Like, you know what the matchups could potentially be, and you have your two options at your disposal, and you're going into the game one. Like, do you have a go-to that you always play in game one, or is there some matchup things you want to think about with what you choose to go first?
So for me, the answer that I got on this when I was like when I first started, and like as always, shout out to Aurora for kind of taking me under her wing and that. But she was always like, you want to play your weaker deck first so that it has two games, so you know it gets two games.
I like that.
And
Yeah.
I think that that's a very, very good place to start. With that said, if since I have something like Professor Esta, which is very different than the advice you'd give a new player, I know that Professor Esta isn't as matchup-y, so I might be tempted to lead with it, which is like a different situation. But as a blanket statement to a new player, I would say play your weak. You play your deck that you think is worse off first, because you know you're going to get two. But there are special cases.
Yeah,
And
I think that's definitely I think that's good advice.
having the like, yeah, I definitely gravitated towards Aurora's advice of playing your worst deck first whenever I was playing other similar formats. Um, but then I don't think they apply as much as they might apply here. Um, I like that idea of like having almost two chances, like knowing that you have one bad matchup, but having two chances. Because if you guess wrong in the first game and then you're like stuck playing your bad matchup with the second game, then like, you know,
Right.
Hmm.
what can you do? Sometimes you're stuck like
Or
that.
or you could use your monster deck. If you play your better one first, your monster deck could knock out the only deck. Well, no, it doesn't work that way. Never mind. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah. I just I like the guaranteed two chances. Just do.
The one thing that I typically tend towards is picking the deck that I think has the best chance to win regardless. Um, I don't know if that's necessarily always a good call, but I think certainly one thing I gravitate towards is in my specific lineup something like the Crusader Judge, um, which I think is sort of it's playing its own game. Like it's not doesn't necessarily care what the opponent is doing. So that case, it's if I think it generally has a good matchup into anything, and so if I'm simply trying to um, mitigate my own risk in matchups, then probably play that one first because I'm going to have the most variability there.
Yeah, I'm settling on that answer as I play more Triad. You limit your variability, and that is a good thing.
Yeah, I think that's also something that I've certainly picked up from. I mean, Nordic Hexad is I know you said in the chat, but I think it is definitely a cousin to Triad. I know the Nordic Hexad originally used to be I think a 5 deck lineup back in
Hmm.
like very early seasons. Talking to Jason of the NCAF of the podcast. also on Team Swindle. And so that used to be, and then they added a 6 deck. So it used to be a ban safe ban, but out of 5, so then you would play a best of 3 with only 3 decks remaining.
What
Yeah,
did they call it back then?
I don't know what its name was back then. I think Nordic Hexad was coined relatively recently out of the seasons.
Yeah, I think one thing that what you were homing in on, which I really like about Best of One and Hexad, is that you have the ability to bring that utility deck that you don't want to win 90% of your games with. You want to win that one game with, right? You know, you look at Hydro Attack as an example, who's got low curve, the Asylum Whale, right? This like 71 SAS deck that'll bring out every once in a while, and like if he had to win every matchup with that deck in every matchup, like would it be in there? Maybe not, but maybe. But you know, he is able to bring it to the games where it's like the right deck to bring, and I think that opens up tools, kind of like those. Well, exactly what Karen was saying for Best of One versus Best of Three.
Yeah, I think the best of one format is, you know, as JT was saying, is also opens up sort of it opens up more of a collection to players. And I think it's a bit much friendlier. Obviously, you know, it is the you know, the unfortunate truth of all card games, and especially something like Keyforge, where people with bigger collections, they're gonna have an advantage no matter what the format is. But I think Best of One allows people with smaller collections to have those specialized decks to sort of try and punch up a little bit higher than they normally would, because you may have a 74 or like a 73 that does one thing really, really well. And if you can guess that matchup right, and you know you punch, you know, you go into the match, you punch them in the mouth, then you're hoping you can get that win, and even if it is like a 90, you know, a 96 monster deck.
Yeah, it's kind of this idea that you can craft a lineup that represents the sum of your strengths rather than being defined by your weakest link in all these situations. And I guess that is a little bit to your other question, Quick Draw, which is, you know, when I'm evaluating which deck to play first, if there's a deck in my lineup that has one winnable matchup, I don't want that matchup to go by. And I don't know if it's my, you know, quote unquote better deck or not. But I'm probably leading with that one just to make sure, like, if they bring my good matchup first and it manages to win against my other deck, you know, I'm like really in the feel bads.
Yeah, it's pretty similar to what One Star Peeps just said in the chat too. Like playing the deck first that has the more polarizing matchup, just to try to make sure you find like the matchup that it can win in either of the games that you play with it. So, yeah, that makes good sense. One thing that we haven't really talked about a whole lot, that's something that I think about a lot when making a lineup and when banning, is something like artifact control. Like I know JT, your lineup, you know, we're looking at here is very artifact heavy, but like I think when you're composing your triad, you know, I personally like to bring at least 2 decks with hard artifact control, um, just so that I can always say like, yeah, I have an answer no matter what they ban. I will have 1 deck with some artifact control. And there's like, you know, this is a long argument. We could have probably an entire episode about, do you really need artifact control? I personally feel in a triad, I want that because I do think a lot of people play triads similar to you, where they're like, yeah, I'm going to bring some artifacts, and if they only bring 1 deck with artifact control, I'm going to burn them. And I like to not have that vulnerability of the artifacts. So like, I think one of the first things I try to do is bring at least 2 with artifact control. I don't know if you guys have a similar thought on that.
So I think, and I'm actually in agreement here for my own line, but I think that's a result of playing from like a deck disadvantage that we're both coming as relatively budget players. I think if you have the best decks, artifact control is not this like big necessary thing, if that makes sense, right?
100% agree. Yeah.
But if you are coming and you're trying to punch up, not having artifact control is absolutely brutal. So I think, because like we always talk about like, oh, in the premier events, look, this like 98 SAS thing didn't have on, and it's like, yeah, but like when it's your 23 speed, it doesn't really matter whether they have encoder, does it? You know what I mean? Like, or like something like
Yeah.
that. And like anything could get it, but like that kind of thing matters less. But if you're playing something like Quinn, which I think is an elite level deck, Quinn needs its R so bad to get around something like Jar, to get around something like Encoder or Amphora Captora. Like all these things, when you're moving at human speeds, become much more necessary to remove um, than they would be if you're playing a deck that is lightning fast and has the pips and does the blah blah blah. And like so
Yeah.
that's my answer there.
Yeah, I think I know there's a good discussion on the Team Sanctimonious Discord about which I think may have been spurred by some Sloppy Lapwork members, but one of the pieces that I think the artifacts that are I think the hard R is necessary for things that, in my opinion, warp the game towards things that um my lineup just isn't trying to do. So artifacts that really either really push power level, something like Dav comes to mind, where if it's a good Dav deck, once that Dav hits the board, their deck is operating entirely differently, as well as on things like Quixel or um, anything like that. I think it becomes a real challenge to try and warp your own game plan to fit into their parameters. So something like Whirlpool is a really good example, quick draw as well, where now I'm playing an entirely different game with my deck that I've forced myself into your arena instead of trying to play forcing you to play my game.
Yeah. I mean, I think Whirlpool is like a much lesser degree of that. Like Quixelstone is like a different game. Like there are some decks that literally just can't operate with Quixelstone on the board.
Yeah.
If you have like under 10 pips and you have no artifact control and you have like greater than like 17 or 18 creatures, like there's very little you can do to win a Quixel matchup if they have a lot of pips and they're like building a lineup that's like based around that. So, like there's probably like two or three cards I think I named that are like game warping enough for me that is enough for me to say, yeah, I want to make sure I bring some artifact control just in case. It's
Yeah.
like that and heart in some decks, like Nemesis that JT was showing us. Like I just personally, I think maybe it's more of like a personal play style thing. Like I just don't want to have to deal with that kind of a grind in a game that I'm not going to enjoy and that I am heavily unfavored in.
Well, I think
I
we've answered
said,
Karen's question there that she said
yeah,
at the beginning, where what's your favorite? What's your favorite? What's your least favorite way to lose?
Yeah,
that's what
that's so
Triad is
true.
all
Yeah.
about. Triad is a format in which you get to choose how you lose.
Or you could just win.
Yeah, I never heard of it.
No, winning is a plus. We expect the losses, and we're always happy if we win.
We're almost an hour in. I do want to get us to our hand and brain game, but there's one thing I
Sure.
really wanted to touch on and like get some talk about. And JT, you've flashed a few lineups of mine throughout this. I gave you two different lineups, and I intentionally switched out one of the decks in the lineups. And so like if I'm trying to build my lineup, and like I'm curious how you expect your opponents to approach things or how you might approach it if like here's like lineup A, we'll call this one with that's Switchblade on the left, Macro Bell, and then Emerald on the right. So if I come with these three, there's three of my favorite decks. Karen, you actually traded me Switchblade on the left. I've had a lot of fun with it. It's been
I'm
fantastic.
glad.
Yeah, it's super fun. It's a very good deck too. So if I look at these three, and then I think like, okay, what's my approach to banning one of my opponents, and what do I think my opponent's going to ban if I bring this lineup? But then if I want to like tweak my lineup a little bit by just changing one deck, so I'm going to take out Emerald, and I'm going to put in another deck that we're going to call the Bard Poet here on the right. Like, how does like even just one deck change how you might approach the matchup. Like this one that we're swapping in here, like has no artifact control. It's got more creature control, got a little bit more amber control. So like it might really like entirely shift the dynamic of this triad, right? Like just by changing one deck. Maybe that's not a direct enough of a question. It's hard. I don't know. Like I don't know how to approach it.
So, I mean, I look at these, and I know when you first presented these, I obviously I noticed the artifact control, but the fact that it was missing didn't necessarily register to me. Most of my decks don't really play necessarily heavy artifacts or crucial artifacts. The one exception would be um, Judge, but again, that can play fairly well without them as well. So in this one, I think the answer for most of my lineups probably has to be Macro Bell. That's more of a, I think that's more of a comment on my Triad than is necessarily on the lineup you've presented, where it's just, 20 speed with, Essence Scale, Triple Torado, just a bunch of nasty things, Double Infernus, um, stuff like all of those pieces, I think, are presenting a lot of threats, even with like the low creature count, even with the low creature control. With something a Triad that I would theoretically be bringing.
Yeah, and does your Triad that you would, I think we showed it a little bit earlier. I'm not sure if we did show yours actually. Do you feel, there it is. You have like 17 creature control in Margaret, 16 in HRH. And obviously I know I have to ban Crude Soothsayer Judge, so that one has your lowest creature control. So like that kind of
Yeah.
thing, like if I go into it thinking like, okay, people are probably gonna ban Macro Bell, but I go into your decks here thinking like, well, Crude Soothsayer Judge has the lowest creature control, so I'm like, if I'm playing a board heavy Triad, maybe I don't want to ban that one as much if I can get a bigger board and use it. So there's like this game of cat and mouse a bit. Like, I want to
Yep.
ban your high creature control deck because Macro Bell succeeds with against like low creature control, but I also expect you to ban it. And I don't know. Maybe are you saying you would ban Macro Bell in both of those lineups that I made?
I would certainly ban Macro Bell in the one with Emerald, and then the one with the Bard Poet becomes a bit trickier because of the disruption that the Dis is bringing, the Markov Dis. I don't have in the only exception would be in Jericho, which only has 11 creatures. Where I would not be susceptible to that, as with hopefully with the and also Bard Poet has no artifact control. And artifact control. So in this case, if I need to ban something here, that's actually, I guess that it does get a bit more tricky because it might still very well be Macro Bell. Just for the sake of if with no artifact in Bard Poet, the safe houses get a lot more chances to work. The only creatures I necessarily want sticking in, I don't necessarily want any of my creatures sticking in Jericho, and all I need is the safe houses to get the Infernuses and Bonithings back in my archives.
Yeah.
So something like that, probably is going to be Macro Bell in both those cases. And if I'm expecting Judge to be banned, now Judge being banned and stuff is new for me because I think a lot of times before, and I don't know if it's because it's been becoming a little bit more well known, or if it's because people are wising up to DT. But typically Judge would always be left alone, so I'm usually expecting Judge to be free. In that case, I still think the creature control in Margaret is good. Margaret makes a really nice board, and it also generally provides enough amber, generates enough amber creating that board. So things that are with high C against it, I'm not necessarily too worried about, and because of that, I don't necessarily care about the marks of Dis either, putting me back into my board houses. But the C being at 17, I think, is a little bit more worrying because it's stuff like unnatural selections and has a double phalanx strike and whatnot. But I still think just your ability to in Macro Bell to vomit out creatures and
It
generate
does
an
that
absurd
often.
amount of value becomes quite worrying if basically I'm looking at this thing. I think if Macro Bell gets out of hand, it's going to start getting very difficult to get back into the game for any of my decks.
Yeah. Macro Bell
Yeah,
has
same
that
here.
tendency. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the best deck by a substantial margin, in my opinion.
I think it is too. And so maybe for the science purposes of this, I should have maybe held it back and kind of presented three decks that were more, level and power level. But like we talked about earlier, I know I have like one or two of my best decks, and they're going to be included, and then
Yep.
that's just happens to be one of them. It's
And you go from
Um,
there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. I think
JT, you know,
and I think this lineup can certainly give mine trouble, right? I certainly don't like the look of the Infernus's against something like Jericho, which has 20 pips.
mhm. Yeah, that's a lot of pips to purge over there.
It is. The nice thing about Jericho is that oftentimes it purges its own. So stuff like the Ritual of Tognaths don't live long if
Yeah.
the Infernus is seen.
Yep. Yeah, that accounts for a lot of your pips. There's no of those double pip or quadruple pip cards in Untamed though. So
Yeah.
All right, JT, was there anything else you wanted to cover on this?
Oh, I think we should probably cut it there. Hitting up in the hour, so maybe we'll transition. We can kind of continue the banter on the game if we like, but we
Yeah.
can close the books on the podcast section of this discussion here. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna move into our game of the week. We're gonna do a hand and brain, where we'll have a triad best of one. JT and I will play on one side, Karen and Murph on the other. I don't think we've decided who's gonna play as the brain. Who's gonna be the brain in each of these? The brain would be the owner of the decks that we're playing.
Why don't we do your decks, Murph? We talked about my lineup more, so let's feature yours.
Sure. That sounds good to me.
Murph will be the brain on your side, JT.
I
Who-
don't really want to play a heart matchup, so why don't we do your decks just to take
Right.
that off
So-
the table?
I'll be the brain on my
Even
side.
you don't want to do it.
No,
You guys are both like,
not
I'm
particularly.
sick of my decks. Let's play someone else's decks. So what we're gonna do here is Murph and I are gonna play as the brains. So it will be our decks, our lineups, and then we'll do a triad best of one. So the brain will choose which deck to ban. Then I think we're gonna let the hand choose which of the other two to play, just to kind of mix it up a little bit. So I will, as the brain here, I will choose one of Murph's decks to ban, and I feel like I have to ban Judge because we've talked about it all day. I mean,
That is fair. You don't want to let it see the light of day.
yeah, no, let's ban Judge. And then
There's no, like,
I had two
1,
lineups.
2, 3, shoot. Just gonna throw that
Ah,
info
well,
out
I
there.
gave him a spoiler alert. It's all right.
Yeah,
Murph,
I
Murph
also
and I already know what we're banning.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We
You assume the
it sounds like you
Macro
guys
Bell.
are
Nope.
banning Macrobell.
yeah.
Let's
I'll ban Macrobell.
let's switch to the Emerald lineup actually.
Okay.
Just so we don't have the two Chinese decks. But Emerald is also one of my favorites, so we'll go with this lineup here that's on the screen for you.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
don't think that changes your decision based on what we talked about.
No, it doesn't.
Okay. So, JT, you have the option of playing either of these two decks. I can send you the enhancements if you need. And then, Karen, you'll have the choice of playing either of Murph's decks.
Yep. So you get to play either Jericho
Yeah.
or you get to play Margaret.
We'll play Margaret.
I'm kind of leaning towards playing Emerald, so we don't have to futz around with enhancements. Is that bad science?
I think that's legit. I think
And also,
Switchblade would result in a very odd game. It's an
can
autoencoder deck that leans into the autoencoder pretty hard.
Yeah, I was gonna say too. Can I
The
like
brain
also
keeps
call
giving
that
the hand some tips.
that Karen knows Switchblade, and I don't want to like walk into that knowing the deck not as well.
Very good point. She probably knows the deck as well
Mhm.
as I do. So, all right, we're gonna go Emerald and Margaret. Is that what we said?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, the hand will start the game. So that's JT, and he's gonna send the password over to the other hand, which is Karen.
Make it competitive,
And
very
then-
competitive. Password is sloppy.
Can you Murph, can you link me Margaret?
Yes, I can.
Floxamal says some Worlds Collide on Worlds Collide action. That is correct.
Mhm.
A little old school here. So,
It's like we're at a pre-release for Worlds Collide.
yeah, I mean, I personally, I'm not like a huge fan of Worlds Collide. I don't know if that's like well known. But Emerald is definitely one of my favorite decks I've had for a while now.
I'm
And
generally not.
yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
no,
I'm generally not a fan of Worlds Collide either, but Margaret is also one of my favorite decks. I opened that for Vault Keepers qualifier number 3, the sealed one. That was easy to close my door for the dogs. But
What's the
for that
password? I'm
one,
sorry. Or are you DMing it to me?
Oh,
Yeah,
it's-
dog.
it's-
Password
I
is
think it's-
sloppy, unless I mistyped it, which is very possible.
and
But
in
it's
hands are
fitting if it was
it
mistyped.
would be fitting. It would be fitting.
Okay. And then
right.
Murph calls the house, and then I make the play, if I'm
Mhm.
correct.
Yeah, that's right. So
Okay.
the brain will call the house. The brain will also decide whether or not to mulligan. Hands are open right now. So as the brain, myself, we're going on honor system here to not look at the other player's hand. So Murph,
Got it. I have honor, I swear.
I swear I do too. All right, so I'm gonna pull up Margaret on my other screen so I don't look like a fool here. But first I can take a look at JT's hand here.
There we go. It's actually really nice that it just you can just click on the one hand, so you don't actually have to look. It's
Yeah.
not just popped up.
All right, I'm gonna say to keep this one.
Indeed, indeed, it is kept.
Going second. I'm gonna go ahead and playing against Emerald. I think that's a keep.
It's a cool name, Babu Gordo. I like that.
Yeah, it's definitely unique. This is I opened this for the Vault Keepers sealed tournament, and it lost in its first ever debut competitive game. And it lost to had a big rush turn, and then it got team TP'd.
So in seal, yeah, this is the sealed one, right? Yeah.
It's sealed, yeah. So I couldn't see a deck list.
I had a great run in that event. I went 5-1 with the Worlds Collide deck, of course, and MVP was Graft. Like you're playing in sealed. It was a 3-deck sealed, pretty big event. If you have a like solid deck with some scaling and control like Graft or TMTP, and they don't know if it's coming, it like can really just change the game completely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I'm supposed to pick a house. Sorry about that, Mr. Hand. Let's go with Shadows.
Oh, yeah, and to Orion in the chat, I agree. MM really is very prevalent on the competitive scene. So seeing anything that isn't that is always refreshing.
Definitely a great point. I like it, Mr. Hand.
Like
Good
that
play.
All right, very good.
Yeah, I like that play. So
starting off the Simon.
So it'd be really interesting to talk at some point, like evaluating cards for hidden decklist sealed versus open Archon, like open list Archon, because I do think can be some significant shifts in how you evaluate things, which is kind of interesting.
So I'll call house Logos here.
Okay. And then I don't consult you at all. I just do this, right?
Yeah,
you're doing your own
no
thing.
consulting. You're on your own. Feel free to, jump in next turn, Murph, after the turn's over, and let her know what you would have done differently. Give some feedback in that way. I think it's been a lot of fun, kind of like playing it like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Comparing notes on the off turn is good times.
All right, we're gonna go Star Alliance here. And the hand can also kind of like push back a little bit after the turn, be like, I don't think I would have called that house. I think last week, not tonight, uh, really like took JT and I. Um, she did not like a lot of the house calls we made. I don't think.
I think on that turn I may have held carrying the information exchange. Sort of, that's I don't think it's at all a wrong decision to discard it. I think it's worth considering holding it for if we're expecting quant value in the next turn.
But now, so my thought was basically like, info exchange is all right, but for 1 amber, it's not worth the hold. For 2, it is, but we didn't have any amber, so I was thinking to toss it. I thought about it for a while though.
Yeah, no, like
so-
I say, I don't disagree with it at all.
Yeah, it was a tough call though. Like you saw me kind of sit with it, I'm sure. But anyway, what are we doing?
I think this is a. I think this is another Logos turn.
I still agree with the discard of info exchange last turn. Not knowing your hand, I still don't think it's a card worth holding, typically, even against a deck like Emerald that has a lot of steel.
Yeah, we weren't generating any amber.
So I had a hot minute where I was really considering putting the universal translator. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Right on.
Yeah, I think I'm cool with that. I mean, I thought that the Hapsis was going to go up against the Simon, but choosing the Quantifight was that was sad to see the Simon go to the discard. So JT, you're really good at drawing cards, so I'm going to say you're going to go Shadows here.
I don't know if you agreed with the Logos call there at all, Karen, but I think that was exactly what I was looking for on that Logos turn.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Okay.
I call it Logos. That makes you feel better.
It does make me feel better. Oh no, you hawked the Anomaly Exploiter.
I know you were eyeing your own quant there, but had to do it.
Well, there's a Legmav Entropic Manipulator in there that would have done it.
Right on.
That's a joke. There isn't. If you're checking the deck list, that doesn't exist in there.
Sad
Yeah. Just wait till Christian Peterson involves and gets sideboarding into the game, and then that's definitely coming in.
So interesting turn there too. I mean, I don't think I hold the Ronnie, but I may have been better off discarding it just because of the double unnatural selection. It's kind of awkward putting it out there.
I don't think I would have discarded it. I think I like getting the body, but you're right. There was some kind of tough decisions, and it's always sad to play Ronnie when they don't have anything to steal.
That is sad.
I think this is another Logos call, Karen.
That's right. That's what the Bren does.
Yeah.
It puts the pressure on.
Yeah. It is sad. Sad Brend.
I don't actually mind that. Like, it looks like the Brend kind of forced them to go back into Logos when they didn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very okay with that.
You don't know what I wanted.
Yeah, you don't know what we wanted. Quick draw.
Don't tell me what I wanted.
I
have
complicated desires,
Mm-hmm. They involve Brend and no amber.
Yeah.
I just realized that rigged lottery last turn got you a 0.
It's rigged. It's rigged.
Ouch.
Yeah, it is rigged.
And they had no shadows for us to steal either. Cheats.
Yeah, like sometimes when you play the rigged lottery, just to like play your other steals with it is really sweet. But getting rid of the shark was great. That's pretty nice there.
Mm-hmm.
This one's a little more awkward, but I think let's go. Let's go Star Alliance.
I'm curious that this was a tough call. So interesting. I guess they have a whole bunch of creaturey ways. A whole bunch. A couple creaturey ways to take us off. Check. 4. But okay.
A whole bunch. I mean,
A
come on.
whole bunch.
This can't be that
I
many.
mean, I feel like 5 would be a bunch. All right, well, this is a very cute quadricoder target. So, congratulations. I think Hapsis is going the distance in this game. At least if we have any say in it. I don't know.
And just note the stealth mode.
Note the
over to you
stealth mode.
guys.
Yes. Note the stealth mode.
So this is going to be a Saurian turn, Karen.
There's the Odoac. Just like we thought.
So you were considering
Just like the Farmer's Almanac suggested.
Ooh,
Farmer's Odoac.
Ludo. Gross.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, this is kind of what Emerald doesn't love to see. I think we go Dis though.
I think there
Interesting.
could certainly be worse things.
Interesting. Not gonna lie, I would not have called Dis. Interesting.
Yeah, I know. I don't think you were necessarily wrong. There's a reason that I'm looking for something, and I just wanted to
Yep.
to get those 4 cards out.
I gotcha. Do I gotcha though? Then I should have. Oh no, not that card. Interesting. Maybe I should have done my battle line differently, but
I think this will be a Saurian call again.
I think your line's fine.
ooh, that
That's a
Imperium
brutal
though.
Imperium. Yeah.
Awkward.
Mm.
Lord Invidious with like the most unnecessary elusive. They're just like, obviously this 5-power demon is elusive.
Well, Margaret's not really making a lot of money here. Okay, now it is.
Yeah, it's like an old CD-ROM, or it's an old hard drive. You gotta let it boot.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, I don't love this, but let's go Shadows.
Interesting. Interesting ones.
Shadow's Call. Intriguing, given the big old dinos on that side with amber on them.
It's okay. I can steal 2 just for pretend. Don't worry. Okay, Bad Penny.
I'll write an IOU out.
I will hold you to it.
Do you have the guts to play the Bad Penny?
I was getting nervous. I thought he might play it. I don't know why.
I was
Nah, you should have
considering.
played it.
Ooh, now this is the tough call.
Only cowards don't play their pennies.
I'll be
Legit.
I will happily be a coward with my penny in the bin.
Now they say a penny in the hand is worth two in the bush.
Indeed. Okay. Interesting.
Right. Yeah, definitely an interesting call there. Um, to say that was incorrect.
Did you like the reap better with Ronnie?
No, definitely not. Um, I like the fight with it for sure. I just wasn't sure if I would have taken out the other Odoak or
Mm-hmm.
popped the ward first and caused 3 on the other one.
Yeah.
Definitely a tough call.
This is going to be a untamed call, Karen.
Maybe they'll play on natural selection. Take out the Odoak for us.
But just maybe. You never know.
You never know.
There is a quadricorder Hapsis over there with the ward, though.
It is a good use of remove a ward.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Where's my Medic Ingram to reward it,
The one that's in the discard?
Yeah, sad times.
You should really, you should ward your Rock Grub.
For the staying power for extra reaps.
Exactly. Exactly. It's really worth 2 Amber then.
Ooh,
Ooh, that's a good play.
that's sad.
It's a little rare that you see the Deepwood Druid like really making you cringe, but that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the double Deepwood Druids and Margaret are quite good. It's a nice one of those situations where you really do get good value out of
Oof.
good value out of that card.
Okay, that could have gone worse.
Red key, obviously.
Oh yeah, you got to forge the red. Yeah.
Okay.
The brain chooses the color.
You don't have to do anything.
Let's
It could be a mutiny, like Doctor Strangelove.
let's do Star Alliance. This is definitely one of those matchups that I would prefer to avoid with Emerald. And I think if we were in a more competitive environment right here, I may have just chosen to ban Margaret on the assumption that Emerald would be the one to play. Because the Odoacs are they can be so tough to handle for Emerald.
Mm-hmm.
It has like a very particular creature control package that you just kind of have to be careful about how you use it.
A draining touch to destroy the Ludo.
Oof. Interesting.
Tough choices over there is what I like to hear.
They are tough choices, yeah. This is not a critique. I probably wouldn't have done things the same way, but I don't think this is that bad at all. I like what you did here.
Yeah, I would be curious. Excuse me, to hear what you would have done differently, because there were a couple options I was considering, and I'm not entirely certain that this was the best. Even this one, I feel like there are a few different reasonable candidates. Oof. Put this on the eldest bear. Maybe Odoak would have been better. Yeah, interesting.
Deception Field is not one that I normally put on my opponent's creature. But that's not a bad play there. considering your creature control or lack thereof. Um, I also think that I would have probably tried to use the Draining Touch on the bear, so I could use the special delivery to get rid of one of the Odoacs.
Yeah.
But because I think I would probably prioritize getting rid of the Odoacs over getting rid of the Ludo. Um, but I think how you played it turned out pretty good.
I think that's super fair. And I was kind of between prioritizing the Odoax or the Ludo. And I saw the second Odoac as like the short straw and the one that I was going to have to really figure out how to deal with. And didn't see that getting off the board this turn either way. So, like, in a world where I have to leave that one Odoac, no, is interesting. Do I mind the Eldest Bear?
What color key am I forging?
You're gonna forge red. We cannot let them go faster than us, and red is definitely the faster color.
Mm-hmm.
So this is gonna be a untamed call.
Also, looking back in hindsight, your rigged lottery was like extra brutal, not just for getting 0, but for what it discarded.
Yeah, we lost some spice.
Yeah,
Losing the Flux is pretty sad.
yeah. The Flux, the Harbinger, the EE. Yeah, that's pretty brutal. But I'm very happy that you're nearing your reshuffle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Flux is going to be great in Winds of Exchange. I'm looking forward to that for sure.
Yeah, with all the tokens of the same power. Yeah, there's so many cards that I'm like, I love how cards that previously were like not super strong might become like really good. Quintrino Flex was always pretty good. But you think about like things like Whistling Darts. There are some tokens that it will just like wipe the tokens off. Um, so there's like some really nice cards like that that it will kind of like see some new value once the tokens are out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know the ruling on it, but like how would Harvest Time work on those tokens? Since they're like the tokens are a different card, obviously. If you purge them, do you purge their entire lineup of those cards?
You lost me there. I think all the cards. I honestly would have to look at the. I don't want to misspeak because I'm not totally up to speed on the token intricacies. But I'd think that you'd purge the ones that are in play at that moment.
I think that
Yeah.
was a wonderfully executed turn there, Karen.
Thank you.
I disagree. I feel like you should have left our board there. That would have been really nice.
Oh, you're right. For all the curio value we're gonna get.
Okay. Well, every once in a while, Emerald has these hands where you're just like, man, um, this is uneventful. So I'm gonna just try to get you to cycle and get to the good cards again and go dis here.
There are no bad cards in my grandpa's deck.
It's true.
I had high hopes for this
His
misery
deck, on the other
exploit.
hand.
Misery Exploit had so
I mean,
much
the Misery
potential, like one turn ago.
Yeah, but you underestimated the value of Deepwood Druids.
You're totally right. Oh, on the redraw. Oh my God.
This is gonna be a This will be a Logos turn. Logos.
It's a hard format, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
You're like counting on your teammate to know what you're thinking to do and to like execute the play. And then on the other hand, the hand is relying on the brain to like lean into the way that they want to play. Like we've talked about style of play before too on this show and like with this format. And if the hand and brain aren't really like in sync with the style of play that you're going for, whether it's like a board flood or, just trying to cycle cards or if you're looking for something specific, it can cause some really awkward games.
Yeah, there's definitely a very, very hard house choice there. What turns to play out here?
I would have gone the other way, I think.
Yeah,
But they're closer.
I think there's good value going both ways on either of those house choices. I think probably the most long-term value is probably Untamed here.
Yeah. I just can't figure out. I actually like literally can't figure out what you want me to do. I'm gonna be honest.
That
No
is
going
fair.
back now.
Yeah.
That's all good. I just can't.
It makes you wonder if there's like a line that you're missing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I sort of miscalculated on one of the pieces.
So this is an interesting thing I missed too. The disruption field. I was like trying to figure out why key cost was 7 for Karen instead of 8, but the assault damage
It's
did the
because
killing.
yeah,
Oof.
yeah, exactly.
So that was sad. That was maybe a poorly placed disruption field after all.
I see.
Womp womp. But interesting nonetheless.
I learned something, Like I said, I don't usually put on the opponent's creatures, but that's a good thought to not put it on something like that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we got that amber back from that Hapsis, finally.
That money. I would have been happier with it on the other side of the board. Interesting.
Discarded the code monkey. Okay. All right.
Do it quick draw. You know what to do. I don't know.
Do I? All right, let's go Star Alliance. Did I guess right?
Oh. Interesting.
I did not.
Interesting. Now I have to decide. Do I do the thing or do I not do the thing?
Yeah, so part of the I think better value, I think, yeah, after I made the logos call would have been in the Untamed Karen. I do agree there. I think you have the opportunity to clear probably the whole board there, as well as better cycling.
Yeah, I mean, I believe in that turn for a couple reasons, but
I was
that's
sort
okay.
of hoping to get the Code Monkey archiving the Eldest Bear and the Deepwood Druid.
Yeah, but the board value's too good against this deck.
That's fair. I thought in that case it would be we dump the Disruption Field, and then the Deepwood Druid will also allow us to hopefully recenter the battle line and heal damage off the Eldest Bear when we get there.
Yeah. My calculation was basically that the 2 creatures were worth more than the 2 amber.
Yeah, that's fair. I think the Malazan definitely, the Malazan, the Dendrix with the discard is certainly ups that evaluation, which I sort of I think it was a much cleaner response to go Untamed.
So, JT, what house would you have called there?
Shadows.
Okay. Interesting.
Now I'm deciding whether or not to commit this other human to the board, and if so, how to do it. But maybe it would have been too slow anyway.
I think it would have been slow. I think that's really my primary thought process at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so
Gonna rearrange my battle line.
yep. Let's put
I think I've
that
said it
there.
before. I really wish that Tactical Officer Moon was in Dark Tidings. I think
Mm-hmm.
that could have been such a good
Missed,
card in Dark Tidings.
missed opportunity.
Yeah.
We needed more commons such as I don't know. There were a lot of like kind of lackluster commons there that could have been replaced by something like that.
He's an uncommon, but I just think of all the potential with like the battle line shenanigans in Dark Tidings. Would have been a
Yeah.
really good card. Um, I'm also not so when I play Emerald, I'm not usually warding Medic Ingram on play. I usually want to ward like another one of the creatures on the board, and I think I would have probably worded something different here as well.
Interesting. This is gonna be an untamed call, Karen.
Hmm.
I know you've been working really, really hard to put damage on auto whack,
Yeah, left it right there.
and I
Yeah,
hate to break your heart.
It's
yeah.
okay.
I'm wondering why'd you use the special delivery there?
Yeah, I I did have it next to the druid. I was hoping to force them to. Well, it was sort of like a well. It's kind of forcing their hand into untamed if they want to clear that damage. Um, and that was sort of the gamble I was taking. Balanced against like Odoac's probably not going to be on a flank if they really don't want it to be on the next turn. So I was trying to leave myself open to being able to attack with any of the Star Alliance creatures or having some of the damage from hand being within range. That was the hope. That was the hope.
Hmm.
Yeah, but perhaps not
Here
worth
it
it.
comes.
And I didn't take the druid with it because I liked having 3 untamed creatures on board. Mm-hmm.
Why 3 specifically?
Because of no safety in numbers.
Ah, yes. That is a card in your deck.
That is a card in there. Yeah.
All right, we'll take that disruption counter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But wait, there's more.
Nice.
All right, it's the Cauldron Boil. Okay.
Okay.
Um. Yeah, this is still a bit unfortunate. Um. Let's hope you have some better luck this time and go Shadows.
Hmm.
Don't tell me you would have gone Dis.
I don't think I would have. I'm contemplating now. So, I mean, we're definitely playing the Spike Trap. I think I want to hawk
Ooh,
it.
more flank damage. Oh, you're hawking it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, now we're talking. Now we're talking.
That flux.
Gain 0 amber.
That flux just ain't happening. We'll play it just for fun. Play it just for fun. Yeah, I don't know. Would you have hawked the trap there?
What color keep, Murph?
Blue.
I think I'm fine with the rush.
I personally like to leave yellow keyed Alaska is my least favorite color. So I like seeing the red and blue in front of me, and I just leave the 3rd key until I win. Because
Nice.
then I'm happy anyways.
Yeah, I think.
So
Oh,
I think
sorry.
this is a. Oh no, I think this is a. I think we call logos here, Karen.
So I think if you had kept the special delivery, I probably would have wanted you to discard the hawk
Mm-hmm.
to have both of those together. But since you had already pitched the special delivery, I think I'm good with hawking the spike trap.
Yeah. And I should have absolutely played the rigged lottery first. Like playing it second was kind of silly. And giving them, all that juicy amber. So sad.
Well, it's sad for someone.
Sad for the heroes.
Here I would have thought guests would get better treatment.
No, we abuse our guests.
That's proper lab protocol.
Yes.
All right, so we actually do have a line here, and I'm happy to go into dis.
Mm-hmm. All right. Dis is the thing we're going to do. Okay.
Yay, we got rid of the last Odoak.
Let's discard a thing. Let's discard that thing.
Ah, very interesting. I like EE as a card, but I think it loses a ton of value in non-dis matchups.
It loses some. It's actually pretty amazing in here, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of, low value discards in here that you like to discard.
I think this is an untamed angle, Karen. Yeah, I don't think it's bad, Zoc. Sorry, Zoc is saying I think it's solid in non-dis matchups. I think it's totally good. Like it's a good card. I just more mean it loses a lot of value in non-dis mirrors that it normally does have.
Floximal says double EEs run out of ammo fast, in non-dis matchups particularly. But I have a deck with double EE and spears, and I've never got the combo to fully go off.
Oh, nicely done. Nicely done. That's pretty cool.
That was a frisky play. I think you guys probably should have killed the EE. But unfortunately, I don't think it's going to matter. But let's go dis and make him sweat.
So I've fought the snag instead of the Yangtze.
The Malazan.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Should have
Yeah.
fought that instead of the Yangtze. That was a play mistake on my part.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think we're still covered in eyes, but it was cleaner play.
Yep. No, I think we should be fine no matter what they do.
Good game.
Nicely
Yeah,
done.
GG,
perfect.
guys.
Perfectly executed, Karen.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You just drew into 3 other discards. It was close. Like I feel like if you had been able to take him off there, I think you had a lot of outs to draw into. But that first rigged lottery really set the tone, I think. Not just for getting the 0, but Emerald really, like, the C is the weakest link in this deck. And you actually discarded both the Harbinger and the Quintrino Flux with that rigged lottery, which is remarkably bad luck. And I think that obviously did you in there.
If it makes you feel any better, you also discarded the shark.
Yeah,
in
it
another
doesn't.
another information exchange.
I was happy to see the shark go, but that does not make up for it in my mind.
Okay, that's fair. That is fair. I think this game would have gone better if we had gone the Untamed that one turn instead of the Logos.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am. I
Alright.
do heartily believe that. Sorry, we lost quick draw there for a second. So I do heartily believe that it would have been a better Untamed turn there. I sort of forgot. I didn't realize we could deal with the Eldest Bear. We could sort of do all the things we wanted to on that Untamed turn, and left with a clear board and protected everything instead of leaving a Malazan or a Dendrix on the board.
Yeah.
And then they would have had no way to get rid of our Odoak.
It's all right.
and it would have
Yeah.
shut down that whole thing. So I think that is definitely a missed line, which definitely made this game closer than it needed to be.
The rig lottery also took out our city state, which is huge.
Yes, yeah, because we've been sitting with a Shrix and a Imperial Forge in hand for a number of turns now.
Oof.
Oh, you held them.
So,
Yeah.
that is often quite live in Margaret. Obviously, the one thing that I really like about Margaret is that it can operate all very well on all three houses. Like as you saw, right? We didn't call Saurian. We called Saurian the first few turns, and after that, we never called it again, more or less.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just get the Odoax
Um,
down for value, and you were good to stick around for a while.
Exactly. Whereas, if the Saurian board is allowed to stick, it can be really really oppressive, or it can play through its Untamed, or it can play through its Logos. So it's quite versatile that way.
Yeah, it's a nice deck to feature there.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks for having us on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you so much for having us on. That was a ton of fun.
Thanks for
Yeah.
joining. It's a very timely week. We talked about with a lot of the Triad stuff that is happening soon, and especially Karen's League starting next week. So we thought it was pretty appropriate. So I'm glad you guys enjoyed it.
Yep.
Mhm.
And make sure, if you're watching this now on the stream, to go and sign up for Karen's Triad League. Go sign up for Kagi, as I am running that, and the signups are live. It's on Sanctimonious Discord and all the other relative bulletin pins. But also,
Smash that like button.
Jolkers, smash that like button, subscribe, give some love to Slappy Lab Work because they do great work. Make sure you follow them on Twitch and turn notifications on. But also
Thanks,
Jolkers Triad, Friday Night Triad, I think is I can't play in it this week, but it looks like a
Yeah.
really fun time.
It's a best of one. So it's a Triad best of one. We talked about that a little bit tonight. I'm really excited for that. Nice casual Friday night thing if you're looking for some games. I find that TCO is sometimes like a little slower on Friday nights. Hopefully with Joker's League, it might liven things up a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Well, right on. So thanks to the folks in the chat as well. We'll drop some links to some of the events that we've mentioned here, as well as to the Swindle Dusk Chronicles, Swindle's Dusk Chronicles streams and YouTube. So check that out too in the description for the VOD after I get it up. But cool. Thanks, peeps. Thanks to Karen and Murph.
You have a good
A lot
night.
of fun. Yeah.
Thank you for having us on.
Thanks everyone.